Hi there, hope you're doing well. In this video I'll be showing you how to add flaps, full span ailerons and crow braking to iNav 2.2. I'll be doing this on my Tyrannus, so the tutorial follows that, and I'll be using the standard glider stick layout. So the throttle will be on the left slider and the throttle stick is now the crow braking stick. If you don't know what crow braking is, it's a way of slowing down the plane so that you can land it easier, which is especially helpful on slopes or where you've got wind coming at you and you need to get it down. Or if your model just wants to fly on forever, crow braking will help. So what crow braking does is the two flaps will go down like normal flaps and the two ailerons will go up. It works great in practice, it's a brilliant system. In the tutorial you'll be able to do the crow braking, you'll also be able to use the flaps as standard if you wish, and you can also use the whole surface as ailerons. To do that, both of the flaps will need to go to different servo outputs on the flight controller. If you can't do that on your flight controller, you won't be able to do the full span ailerons, but that's the only real limitation. Right, so let's get started. So what we first need to do is create a model in OpenTX. If you're already using a model for, say you've got a powered glider and you want to add crow to it, whatever, you can just add the extra bits if you need to. Alright, so there we go. Right, the first thing we need to do is create a curve. I'll call this curve crow, and it's a simple 2-point curve which goes from 100 to 0. That's it, done. Right, the next thing I'm going to do is, because I'm setting up for a glider, I'm going to change the throttle stick. If you're already using, I don't know, say you've got a Ranger or a Phoenix and you want to keep your throttle stick as is and use crow on the slider, then you don't need to change this part whatsoever. What you would do, so now add the crow part in here. I'll be choosing throttle stick, but you just choose your slider if you want to keep your controls as is. The rest of everything is the same. It's literally just the inputs, you need to worry about that. And we're all done on the inputs. Actually, no, we're not going to lie. Whichever one you use the slider on, whichever one you use for crow, regardless whether it's the throttle stick or the slider, you need to apply the curve to it. That's it. Right, so now what we need to do is add in our crow to our mixer. For that we will be using input crow. That stays standard. And the other thing that we need to add is a mode switch, which I'll call crow mode. And this will tell us, or it will tell iNav whether we want to use flaps, full span ailerons with crow, or just crow on its own. So for this, I'm using switch SE. That's it. All the rest you can set up for all your regular iNav flight modes and arming switches, whatever you want. All you really need extra for this is that and that. Right, so that's all we need to do in Mixer. And that's pretty much it. The only other thing you could do is add some sound files with the switch down up so that you know what it's doing in that mode, which I won't bother with for now. Oh, sorry, the other thing, somewhere, throttle source, if you do change the throttle, change that to LS, or you will constantly be getting reminders when you switch your Tyrannus on that the throttle's not low. Because what you actually want is the throttle stick to be all the way up. All the way up is brakes off. But again, that's only if you change the throttle stick and use the left slider as your throttle. Right, so that's done. I'm not going to save it because it's already on my Tyrannus. I was just going through. Right, the next thing that we need to do is head over into iNav. Just switch the flight controller on. And what I'm going to do is create a blank mixer. You can, obviously I've set this up I'm using an F405 wing for this. I've got it all set up and configured. What I wouldn't mind actually having is a blank mixer, but they don't do that. So what I'm going to do is get rid of everything. I'm sorry about that, I just did a cut, so I've basically wiped the mixer so it's completely clear and we're starting from scratch. The first thing we'll do is set up our logical conditions so they're all good to go once we enter the mixer. So the first rule we'll create is to say, we'll create 3 rules to say where the switch positions are. See, only sort of niggle I've got about this is you can't just assign a switch, but never mind. So what we need to do is create greater than RC channel, and our mode switch was on channel 6, value 1600, so that's over halfway. So that will be switch position 0, we'll call it, and that is crow on. Second one, we want NOR, which is, we'll set it up so it's neither this one or this one. So logical condition 0, logical condition 2. So when neither of these logical conditions are true, this will be active, which is our middle position on the switch, which is full span ailerons with crow braking. Right, so now we need less than RC channel 6 and a value less than half, which 1400 will do. And those 3 logical conditions are just for our switch position, for our crow mode switch. The next 2 logical conditions we're going to set up is to determine whether crow is off. The reason we do this is because if we're using crow braking, the ailerons are already deflected, so we don't want the ailerons to still have 100% throws, otherwise it could damage the servos or overgo the limits. Especially when, what I'm going to suggest is when you set up the aircraft is set the physical throws to the maximum you can possibly get. I'll go into this in more detail later on, but measure if you've got something that's flying great now, measure how far they go and then change the servo so you can get the most throw, obviously without damaging the servos or the model, just so we can get the most control out of a crow brake. So what you want to do is, the first one we're going to see if the crow slider is just moved off the top point, because obviously all the way up is crow off, so you're flying as fast as you can, and as soon as you start moving it down, the crow comes on. So we want to make sure that the crow has only just come on. So if this is off, we know that we're not crow braking. And the next thing we're going to do is check this condition, but also the logical condition 2, which is our flaps. So if we're only using flaps, crow is never on, so we don't need to worry about the ailerons. So we can do an OR switch, logical condition 2, and logical condition 3. So we use number 4 to check. If number 4 is active, crow is off, and we're safe for how much aileron we want. Right, the next one we're going to set is actually the opposite of that, so that we know that crow is on. So that's just a simple not logical condition 4. Right, and the last one we're going to set up is just so that we know that the flaps aren't on. And these are all just so we can set up different mixes depending on what state we're in. So again, it's going to be a not logical condition 2. And that's it, just save that and close it. So our our logical conditions are all set up now. It's just onto the mixer. Right, so as I say, I've just blanked everything just to make it easier. So I'm going to add a new rule. Obviously, when you first set this up, if you go through airplane, load and apply, you'll get the servo numbers. But we know that servo 3, this is all correct for the F405 wing. So servo 3 is stabilized roll, that's 100%. Servo 4 is stabilized roll again, and that is also 100%. But we only want it 100% when crow braking is not applied. So we need to change this so that it's only when logical condition 4 is active. So what about the rest of the time? Right, so let's add 2 more for stabilized roll. And at the moment we'll set it to 25%. Because with crow braking you want as much as you can. So we'll set that to 25%. And we'll set that to logical condition 5, which is crows on. And we also want to add 2 more. Sorry, just deleted them. 2 more. 3 and 4, which is again the ailerons. And this is when you've got full width ailerons on. Sorry, I've got this wrong. This is actually on servos 6 and 7, which are your flap servos. So this is your inner servos for your ailerons. So I'm going to set it for 50 at the moment. But what we need to do, logical condition 1, so that's full span ailerons. With full span ailerons, the idea is that you have the outer ailerons, or the regular ailerons, as it were, at 100%, or their full range of throttle, whatever, or throws, whatever you want for that. The inner ones should be around 66% of the outer ones. So, as what we'll do is, as I said later on, because we're going full physical throws, what you'll be doing is dialing down on the weight of these two, the first two here, on logical condition 4, until you get the throws that you need. So say when you measure your model, the aileron moves 16 millimeters or 15 millimeters. If you got this at 100%, you may find it moves 20 or 25, because, as I said, you want to get the most throw out of them as possible. So in which case you dial this down to maybe 75, or just play about with it until you get that 15 millimeters of the throws that you know work well. Once you've got that, the weight of this one, basically divide it by 3 and multiply it by 2, and that's what you put in these two here. So that should actually be 66 if we're saying that they're 100. So that's where you go for there. Right, so if we carry on, that's all we need on the stabilized roll. So the next one, we put our pitch in, because I've not set that up. And that's on always. Next one is servo 5, which is our yaw. And that's on always. Right, so that's most of it done. It's now we're into what the flaps themselves do. So let's add 2 more. So these are all on 6 and 7. Right, RC channel 5, which is our crow stick, whichever one we're using. You may need to change 1 to 100, 1 to minus 100 to get them both to go the correct direction. That's the only thing you might need to change. So this is on logical condition 2. So that is flaps only. So you could set that to 100% because the flaps, like the crow, work on that well, either the slider or the stick, so you control how much you want to put into them. So you don't need 2 or 3 level flaps, you just dial it in to how you like. Right, the next two, again, 6 and 7. RC channel 5. And this is logic condition 6. So that is anything but flaps. So this is all crow modes. And what you do is, we're going to set this to 75. And basically what you want to do is, it's going to be the opposite to this number here. So this is how much your ailerons, how much throw the control surfaces have got for the ailerons. So we're giving it 25%, and the crow we're giving 75%. So that'll get a nice amount of braking on there, and you've still got some control in the roll. If for turning, when you're crow braking, it's better to try and use the rudder, and then just use the ailerons to try and keep it flat in the sky. Same with landing and playing with wheels, really. So that's those two. So logical condition 6. And then we need to add 2 more rules, which actually affects the ailerons on 3 and 4. But again, this is using the crow stick, and this is going to be the same. So 75, 75. That's on, sorry, that should be minus. And we want that one to be minus as well on my setup. As I say, you may need to play about with the minuses just to get the controls moving in the correct direction. And again, they're on logical condition 6. And the last one we're going to set up is on the elevator. And we're going to add some RC channel 5. And we're going to go -10. And what this is doing, we set it up in logical condition 2, so it's flaps only. So what this is going to do is add a bit of elevator to compensate for the flaps. So the idea is, when you put your flaps down, it's obviously going to try and pitch the plane, and you adjust this value here to try and get it so that it keeps the plane nice and level when you've added flaps. It's just a little helper. Right, so we save and reboot. The next step is to try on the Tyrannus, or on the actual iNav setup, make sure I've done it right.
Hi guys, sorry about the handheld video, but I really just need to get this bit shot so I can complete the overall tutorial. Basically my rig is starting to fail, so I need to get this done. Right, so on this test rig we have ailerons, we have an elevator, and the 2 in the middle are our flaps. As I say, the rig is starting to fall apart. This is only solder, so not the best setup, but it will demonstrate. Right, so let me try and get a better position on the Tyrannus. So this switch here is our mode switch for the crow. So all the way forward is crow. So this is on the throttle stick, and you'll see the flaps will go down and the ailerons go up, and you still get control movement on the ailerons. So that is the regular crow. That's position 1. Position 2
crow on
is full span ailerons. So again, crow acts the same, but all the control surfaces will move, and also when the crow is off, all the control surfaces will move. What you want to do, I'm sure I explained in the other video, but just in case it isn't, the outer ailerons you'd have at 100, not necessarily 100%, but 100% of the recommended throw. So if that's 10 mil, have that at 10 mil. The flap ones, you want about 60% of the outer. So if that's 10 mil, maybe you have these at 6 mil. So the flap should move less than the actual ailerons themselves. And again, both surfaces will move when the crow is on. The last setting is just flaps. So all the way up is clean, all the way down is flaps on. And as you can see, it's adding compensation onto the elevator, which you can still use again, but as I said, you'll have to go a few mistakes high and tune that compensation into your actual model. And that's all there is to it. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial.